So we mentioned that the US has pulled out of the United Nations Human Rights Council. This is the first step, because in the coming weeks we may also see America pull out of the UN altogether. Now this is in part due to IMF again threatening everyone. Now, as a reminder for regular listeners and the new listeners, the United Nations was broken up a couple of months back. It was not sovereign anymore. It was not operating the way it was set up. It was stealing funds from each country and was unable to underwrite treaties. Only sovereign entities can do treaties, and the UN is not sovereign. So it was broken up for criminality, and the funds were returned to the relevant countries where the funds belong to, including all the membership fees, which were stolen funds. There was no original charter for membership fees for each country. There was another let's loot every country. Now, the real head of the current UN is now Kim, as the UN was pledged to the trust. All the rest of the UN now is an illusion for the public. Yes, the Rothschilds owned or held 6 seats on the original UN. It doesn't exist. They think they can just carry on willy-nilly. They can't. And we may well see Trump pull America out of the UN altogether, and at that point you'll see it completely collapse, because then the illusion will no longer play out. If you thought that intel was hefty, you ain't heard nothing yet. The IMF were going around threatening everyone, and the reason why is they're completely bankrupt, totally bankrupt. And apparently it's sending memos out to all the countries, and it's also the reason they are running around the world trying to collect money. Memorandums have now gone out to all its member nations, warning them that the IMF is completely bankrupt. The IMF creditors are suing them, the IMF, in international court for $8.76 trillion in interest and principal owed. Oops. Message for the clowns. Anyone thinking that they're going to get paid by the IMF yesterday, today or next week should know by now that they have been declared bankrupt. Further, the IMF will no longer be able to manipulate currency values in any way. Currencies will be evaluated starting today in accordance with the nation's GDP, production and asset bases. This applies to currencies currently in circulation only, so none of the fake currencies will apply. And so the IMF cannot overprint currencies anymore. The trust has now frozen all market backdoors, all of them, and has installed a mapping system which will track real production of commodities and commodities futures, and the markets shall bear numbers based on actual production, supply and demand. Real figures, go figure. Not affected in any way by what CNN or the BBC or any other news station reports. And further, no one cares about OPEC increase, decrease in output, because the price of oil has no bearing any longer on these decisions. So you'll see them talking about OPEC has to reduce the volume they're producing and the price goes up or down. That has now been stopped. Oil will eventually go down to a high mid-20s per barrel and will remain stable. So none of this boom and bust where they collect loads of money on futures bets, that has now been stopped, and oil will drop to the mid-high 20s per barrel. Bear in mind, rogue clown elements in the military have been paying $25 per barrel since day one, and then selling it for $60, and then they weren't happy with that amount, making $35 a barrel, So then they stole it via ISIS and Al-Qaeda and ISIL and IS and all the other bogus names of what is basically a group of mercenaries that they control. And were stealing it from Iraq for free, even though they were getting it for $25 a barrel. Our market corrections started today and will continue over the next several weeks in a stable, controlled manner as to cause no disruption except to the elite that profit off market manipulation. Next news item. The set of books in the Trust's new system will not allow for currencies to be overprinted, produce fake super notes to be deposited, nor any stealing of funds to a black server, such as what happened with the Pentagon. Once funds are out of the system, they will be seen as fraud if they just appear. Same will happen if it disappears, and this also applies to consumers and banks. No more printing volumes of dinars to sell to people on the alternative media, and dings and dongs and dungs and all the other zims. God almighty. The banks are going to be, now they're under the control of the quantum system, are going to be heavily regulated. They will no longer be able to report fictitious numbers to central banks any longer, claiming that they are still liquid with fake bank books. No more mirrored accounts, no more dodgy accountants placing debts as assets and vice versa. And if they are not found to be solvent, this will be reported immediately to the authorities in the area to take action.